Shalom, Chavarim, Erev Tov, back with you again. Continuing on in the Pasuk analysis series, I'm going to go ahead and turn to our lesson placard tonight. Okay, so here we have it. It's drill number 6. It's actually a good thing once in a while to go back to older drills that you've not done in a while and to do them again, because you'll find, oh yeah, I was rusty in that. Oh, whoops, forgot that. Oh, have to look this rule up. Didn't remember that. So it's only by doing these again and again and again, like most drills, that's the nature, the purpose of a drill is to do it so many times, you no longer need to do it. And when you're able to read the Hebrew Bible with excellence, guess what? You've arrived at the finish line. You no longer need to practice drills. Name of drill 6, as you might remember, is decoding Dagesh, strong or weak. Why did I choose the word decoding? Good question. I find that most new readers to the Hebrew Bible, this is one of the things that trips them up more than anything else, Shva probably being a close second, is they cannot remember or they do not understand when they're confronted or presented with a dagesh, that's that dot that appears inside the belly of some of the consonants. They are caught off guard sometimes and they're not sure, is this a strong dagesh or is it a weak dagesh? This drill will sure us up. Okay, here's our practice verse. Here's our practice verse. This is a multi-step process in terms of the dageshim. It's the plural of dagesh. We go to the next practice verse sheet. I've done the first step. The first step was to take a colored pen and to draw a box around every letter that has a dagesh. So let's just take a quick look at what I have come up with here. We have two that appear in the first line. So we have the bet and we have the yod. And the question may be asked, well, why does it matter? Why does it really matter in terms of the dageshim? Is it strong or is it weak? In some cases, it will affect the pronunciation. In some cases, it will produce a phenomena called gemination, or otherwise known as the doubling of a certain letter. And this matters for how we divide up words into syllables. And so it really does matter. And I realize it can get and can seem rather technical as we go through the drill. It's the rules that will keep us safe and will keep us within the parameters and will help us to discern what we are actually looking at. There are over 50 usages of the dot in classical Hebrew. And so this is a major use of the dot. The dagesh appears pretty much everywhere, not in every word, but as you can see here, we've got a dagesh that's appearing in 4 different instances in a very short verse. Word ki means 4. It's the 3rd instance, and then the bet at the bottom is the 4th. And maybe those wondering, well, David, did you miss one? There's a dagesh here. Why didn't you draw a box around that one? In this particular example, I'd like to jump to the answer key at this time just to educate you in what the dot is that's inside of the vav, why it is not a standard dagesh, and what that means for us. Here's our trusty answer key. So notice I've got a line down here from the shurek pointing to some blue notations. And so it says, if you notice, this dagesh, none of the 3 rules apply. Now, I haven't had the time to read the rules, but if I took time to read the rules, none of the rules apply. You should have a copy of the rules, by the way, in your 3-ring binder, and whenever we do this assignment, just simply take it out. If you ever lose it, just download another one. I'll always have the link beneath the video. So this is actually not a standard dagesh, not a dagesh. Oh, it looks like one. It's part of the vowel shurek, which is the long form of kibbutz, which says u as in the word shoe. So it's not a weak dagesh. How do we know that? Because it's not a begad kafat letter. Those determine the consonants that are holding a weak dagesh. It's going to be a begad kafat letter, and I do have begad kafat charts also in the download section. It is not a doubled consonant, so it's not a strong dagesh. How do we know that? We know that by examining what comes immediately before it. It has to be immediately preceded by a vowel, any vowel, and that would render a true dagesh to be strong, and it would cause a doubling in the letter. And so if this were a strong dagesh, the literal spelling of the word would be lamed gimel vav vav resh, but it is not. So it doesn't comply with those rules. And so upon closer scrutiny, by deduction, by logical deduction, we can deduce if none of the rules apply, then it really has to be this sort of a situation. And in my understanding, it will only take place in a vav, render it really to be a shurek. So this vav is not operating as a consonant. It's an actual vowel. It's on the vowels list. Just take a moment to go through the answer key here. So what are the codes? The W stands for weak, and it tells us when a Dagesh is a weak Dagesh. The S stands for strong, and then the numbers refer to rules. So you can see there's a 2, there's a 1, there's a 2, there's a 2. So we have 3 rule number 2s, 1 rule number 1. We jump down to the rules. We're not even going to look at 3 because it doesn't really apply. Rule number 2, which there's 3 examples of this, says if a Dagesh happens to be inside a Begad Kafat letter, and I just referenced that, and it is not preceded by a vowel, then it is a Dagesh lene, a light Dagesh, which means no gemination, no doubling. In this case, the sound of the consonant will harden if in fact the Dagesh appears inside letters like bet, kaf, or pei. In other instances where they occur in other Begad Kafat letters, it will not harden. In this case, the sound of the consonant will harden if in fact the Dagesh appears inside one of these 3 letters. Bet, kaf, and pei. What does it mean to harden? The vet, V as in van, the vet becomes a bet when it is populated with a weak Dagesh. The chaf becomes kaf, and the fe becomes pei. And the rest of the Begad Kafat letters, really, there's no difference that Dagesh occurs inside those letters or not. There is no difference in how we pronounce those. Rule number 1 states, if a vowel appears beneath the consonant that immediately is preceding the Dagesh, then the Dagesh is a Dagesh forte, Dagesh chazak, strong Dagesh, indicating gemination, and it doubles the consonant. All right, let's go back to our answer key. Let's go through this one at a time. So the W2, W stands for weak. 2 stands for rule number 2. Rule number 2 states if the letter that precedes the letter that the Dagesh appears in, so the letter that precedes it is the vet, and we want to really be looking for a vowel here. If there's no vowel there, this Dagesh cannot be strong. It's got to be a weak Dagesh, and it also is weak because it appears in a Begad Kafat letter. In this case, pronunciation of the letters changed from the V sound in vet to the B sound in bet. That's the effect, the impact of a weak Dagesh on a Begad Kafat letter. Next example, we have an S1, S meaning strong. So if it's strong, we should look to see it being preceded by a vowel, any vowel, that will render it to be strong, which means gemination, which is doubling. And so we really spell this word vav, yod, yod, resh, dalet. Next example, get a W2, a weak Dagesh. Number 1, it is a Begad Kafat letter. That can tell us it's weak, but it's also weak because it is preceded by no vowel. There's no vowel here. If there was a vowel there, it would render this to be a strong Dagesh inside a Begad Kafat letter. That can happen too. It's like a curveball. That's where rule 3 comes into play. Finally, we've got a W2. It's not an IRS tax form in this case, but dry humor. So W2, weak Dagesh. Rule number 2 comes into play. So it's weak. Number 1, the Dagesh is in a Begad Kafat letter, and actually it's the same exact letter that appeared up here. So the same exact thing applies, and also notice there's no vowel. If there were a vowel, it would render this Dagesh to be strong, and it would be a strong Dagesh inside the Begad Kafat letter, doubling the Begad Kafat letter. All right, so that covers our decoding Dagesh exercise. Encourage you to try this exercise on your own, and when you're done, you can get out your answer key that I provided you, and you can just see how you've done. If you're really eager, you can go on to the next verse and try decoding Dagesh on Genesis 12:11. All right, bless you guys. Signing off. We'll see you in the next drill.